My Chopsticks Gave Us Power represents the reclaiming of identity and the collective empowerment that arises from embracing cultural pride and fostering unity within the Asian American struggle. It also happens to be a line from the song Warriors by Warren Hugh and Sori from the 88 Rising Shang-Chi album. A perfect example of the importance of Asian voices within the American music industry. Hello, my name is Zoe, and I am joined by my colleagues Anna, Anirudh, and Armagon. Today, we are here to show you the impact that 88 Rising currently has on Asian American culture and how you can empower multitudes of Asian Americans through representation in an industry that has only ignored us in the past. So, to begin, let's take a look at the executive summary of our presentation. The problem. What is the next steps required for 88 Rising to rise to the next level? Our solution, the Midsummer Madness strategy. Now, this might sound familiar to you, and we want you to remember this as we go through our presentation. And the impact of our solution is to expand Asian cultural representation across North America, maintain a strong brand image, and raise $2 million in the next 3 years.
Thanks, Zoe. As the problem mentioned, it can be very vague and very broad. So we highlighted some key objectives and underlying problems that we'll be addressing for you today. First one being is, should 88 Rising expand the range of the music genres it showcases, even if it means potentially diluting its strong brand image? As well as, how can 88 Rising achieve a balance between maintaining control and scaling the business? Last but definitely not least, with the increased competition in the market, we want to address on how 88 Rising can sustain its competitiveness for this long-term sustainable growth.
Okay, now I want to bring this a little bit more personal. So I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Zoe. I am a half Chinese Canadian, and I was born and raised in Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada. Now, many of you probably have no idea where that is, but is it primarily, and actually 80% of this community is white. And because of that, growing up, I felt a lack of Asian Canadian identity. And this is something that impacted me by the way that I was consuming music. It wasn't until 2016, when I was 14 years old, and I actually discovered K-pop for the first time. And that is where the first time I ever saw myself represented on TV, on screen, and through music. Before then, I never felt like the songs that I was listening to were for me, that they represented my stories. So that's why this case is so unique and important to me. I'll now pass it to Anna.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna. I'm half Chinese as well. You may wonder, I doesn't look like Chinese. However, I was raised and born in China, Beijing, and I will almost spend my entire life in China. So I actually have full of Asian and Chinese blood in my entire body. So I moved to Canada 2 years ago, and I listen to Asian music a lot more often compared with I was in China. And I feel a sense of belonging every single time when I listen to it. So me and Zoe are actually your potential customer. So after getting to know your potential customer, let's take a closer look to your potential competitors. First, we conduct a competitor analysis. As you can see over here, we identify 7 companies that could be your potential competitors. First, let's take a closer look at the top right corner, which 3 of the biggest music company has located. Universal, Sony, and Warner has occupied more than 60% of the market. Meanwhile, let's take a closer look of our other competitor as well. As we can see on the left, BMG, HYBE, etc., all of them are music company who has dedicated to bring Asian culture and Asian music to the rest of the world. Finally, let's take a closer look to where you locate at. As we can see in the blue bubble in the middle, we are in high performance company who is specializing in bringing Asian music to the rest of the world. In such highly competitive environment, we doesn't have much market share compared with other American companies. However, in the next 10 years, we're hoping to change the situation to help you gain more market share and to bring the Asian music to the rest of the world. Next, I would like to emphasize, according to our research, Sony just opened their headquarters in Singapore at March 2022, and Universal Music Group opened their new office in Shanghai, China at November 1st, 2021. So, as number of record and entertainment companies shift their focus into Asian markets, we really need to expand our network and publicity as soon as possible in order to maintain a competitive advantage in Asian American markets.
So this is a very socially charged issue. So we wanted to conduct some academic research. Now, this looks like a lot of information, but what we did was a cause and effect analysis. And I really want to just point out the opportunities here. So after conducting this research, there is a growing demand from young Asian Americans to find community and representation within the music industry. And the larger corporations are only just starting to catch on, like Anna mentioned. With your current position in the market as the arbiter of Asian cool for an international audience, you can win the hearts and minds of Asian Americans everywhere, including myself. So the key takeaway here is that 88 Rising should continue to be the #1 label focused on Asian American culture and representation. Next, what I did was we took the current 88 Rising artist roster, and we looked at the 6 main markets that your artists already come from. And we noticed that from the Philippines and from Thailand and from Japan, there were only 1 or 2 artists. So the key takeaway here is that diversification within the East and Southeast Asian music industries is possible and would attract diverse fans from across cultures. I do just want to point out that this is going to be key to part of our implementation, so please remember this part of the analysis.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoe, and thank you, Anna, for going over such a detailed yet brief research and analysis. Now, let's take a look at the criteria. We have 3 main criteria based off which we would want to route our implementation and evaluate our alternatives. As you can see on the screen, the 3 of them are competitive edge, brand image, and financially sustainable. Now let's see how we evaluate our alternatives and try to navigate ourselves into the recommendation we have for you today.
Thanks, Annie. So today we have a two-part alternative for you in where you have to make 2 key decisions. And the first one of them being is whether to operate in the Asian American niche that you currently have or expand globally with your music diversification and genres. With the Asian American niche, some of the strengths here is it allows you to maintain your competitive advantage with its underserved Asian American market. And subsequently, it allows you to maintain that strong brand image that you so highly value. As a result, it allows you to expand cultural representation across Northern America and globally. One downside here is it is difficult to scale in the very short term, but our solution will help you implement that and navigate that. Looking at the global music diversification through different genres and different cultures, the strength is it allows you to reach economies of scale and scale the business exponentially, allowing you to reach a greater target audience. Some of the weaknesses, it will risk your strong brand image and divert from your core value while operating that red ocean market that is super competitive and very saturated. And the key takeaway here is we want to essentially have you build on your current strategy as a niche player, maintaining your competitive advantage in order to build a sense of community and reputation within the industry.
Awesome. Now let's move on to the second part of the alternatives we'll be evaluating today. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, there are 3 core parts when it comes to the music industry, which is recording, publishing, and live events. So we've analyzed the positives and negatives of each. I'd like to draw your attention to the negatives of recording in the bottom left. Now, it is highly dominated by big players like Universal and Sony and Warner, like we mentioned before. And it's also an extremely saturated industry globally. I also draw your attention to the negatives of publishing. It requires extensive time in the market to build and leverage your reporting. But now we would like to be focusing on the live events part of things. As you can see, for the last year after COVID, we have brought in about $2.2 billion US dollars in revenue just by ticket sales alone. And the growth rate since COVID has quadrupled. With a growth expectation of 9.8 billion USD by 2026, we sincerely think that we will be able to capitalize this part of the music industry. As you can see, one of the main negatives I would like to draw your attention to of the live is requires significant capital. Now let's see how we, from our solution, can raise capital from different methods. Now let's see what our implementation is. Introducing our implementation.
Thanks. So our whole thing, Midsummer Madness, you may be wondering what that is, and you may already know. Midsummer Madness comes from a current song that 88 Rising has produced with features with such as Higher Brothers, Rich Brian, and Joji. The reason we chose that, the big theme around this song is the self-reflection and identity and the aspiration aspect of it, which my teammates Zoe and Anna have showcased in the early on. With that being said, we want to recommend that you expand 88 Rising by allocating your focus and resources on targeting your niche Asian American market by increasing the number of live events and live tours that you host annually, which will allow you to maintain that competitive advantage and expand Asian pop culture to Northern America by bringing a sense of community to those who feel abandoned and left out, as a result, allowing you to scale 88 Rising at a very controlled and sustainable rate.
So, how are we going to implement Midsummer Madness strategy? Well, this is a 3-phase solution, but this is the main core phase, which is that we plan to host Head in the Clouds Vancouver and Head in the Clouds Honolulu. We believe that it is essential that you profit and capitalize off of the popularity and success of Head in the Clouds. For example, many of my friends from all over the country went to New York City to see the Head in the Clouds Festival. Unfortunately, I couldn't go as I was practicing for this competition, but if there was one in Vancouver, I definitely would attend. So why are we choosing Vancouver and Honolulu out of all of the places? Well, Vancouver's population is 30% East or Southeast Asian, making that 750,000 potential customers. And also, the Canadian market is untouched. There is no Asian Canadian music festival like Head in the Clouds. It is a very new industry that you can really take advantage of. And why Honolulu? Well, Honolulu has a 50% of its population is East or Southeast Asian, making up 180,000 people and a lot of Japanese and Chinese tourists as well. So how do we plan on implementing Head in the Clouds Vancouver and Honolulu? Well, the Vancouver solution and the Vancouver event would be similar to the New York City or LA models, as that has had great success. But we would also add a focus on Asian Canadian influencers and the acts that you bring to the show. Then for Honolulu, we are thinking that this could be a smaller lineup, more boutique, more exclusive, and it could be hosted in the winter, such as the same as your Asian dates as well, because there is nicer weather, and Canada is not quite the same. So this also gives you the opportunity to incorporate Pacific Islander culture into your festival as well. The second phase of our implementation is to invite diverse Asian artists and influencers. The key word here is diverse. So like I mentioned in the analysis, you have the opportunity to attract new audiences by creating a space to experience various parts of the Asian American community. For example, K-hip hop fans may become more interested in J-rock fans as they attend this festival. So what I did was we looked at those 6 countries that you mainly have your roster from. And I found 4 different groups of artists that we think you should target for your next festivals. These being from K-pop, Thai pop, J-rock, and philo pop. I want to really focus here on K-pop and Thai pop for a second. I chose a selection of K-pop groups and artists that have roots in America. Some of their members are American or Canadian, or some of the solo artists are American or Canadian themselves. And then Thai pop. Thai pop is a growing industry that is only just starting to gain footing in the last few years. So I think this is a great opportunity to showcase Southeastern Asian culture in America and Canada. And then finally, our third phase of our implementation is to diversify fan culture activities. So Asian music fans are known to be very dedicated and have created their own Asian American fan cultures, myself included. So how are we planning on really taking advantage of that amazing fan culture that exists already is to really take those trends that are so popular and incorporate that into your music festival. So having local food and drink vendors at your event, as well as having karaoke or four-cut photo booths are other very popular attractions that you could have at your event to make this more than just about the music. It's also about bringing together Asian Americans and Canadians and turning this into a celebration of culture.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoe, for going for going through that in so much detail. Now, the question is funding. Why do we need funding? Requirement of capital for our strategy. As mentioned before, we plan to host different events and make quite a few changes in the events hosted in 2 different locations. Now, how are we planning to do this funding? We majorly have 2 steps. The first one is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding really stands out as a unique form of funding method. While we were brainstorming, we realized that we didn't want to stick to the stereotypical or standard debt or equity financing method. We wanted to really harness the power of the crowd and enabling individuals around the world to contribute a little amount of money towards a common goal. And that common goal is Asian American empowerment. And this was kept deeply in our hearts. The second part is partnering with Stop AAPI Hate, which we'll go over in the next slide in a little more detail. I'd like to draw your attention to the right bottom corner, which is the main target in the next 3 years, which is $2 million in the next 3 years. Moving on to the next slide. Crowdfunding, raising capital with limited edition music merch. We are planning to really capitalize on making a sale on, say, a specific artist or a specific band in order to really hype up the whole Asian American band. And exclusive artist experiences offer fans the opportunity to participate in exclusive songwriting opportunities or songwriting workshops with specific artists. And we'll be partnering up with a charity, which is the second part of our funding approach, and we'll donate 20% of the money raised to Stop AAPI Hate. AAPI also stands for Asian American and Pacific Islanders Hate. Moving on to the long-term plan of our implementation.
Yeah, so how we want to make this sustainable for the long term. Our long-term plan includes increasing with those live events. We want to increase demand for the individual tours for specific artists that have great performances, allowing fans to attend those as well as a side benefit. But in the 7 to 10 year range, you want to be able to decrease the amount of events you host annually and bring it back to LA for that exclusivity with that increased demand, and establish that larger Asian music festival vibe, kind of like Coachella, and you want to think that big. And additionally, you want to slowly start to get moving into that movie industry and capitalize on the rise of Asian Americans in Hollywood, like Shang-Chi and Crazy Rich Asians has been in the box office. And with that being said, you want to be able to expand the head in the clouds function to other countries such as UK, India, and globally. Moving on to our timeline. With our timeline here, you want to set up crowdfunding ASAP. That's the big part of raising funds to host those events, those new events annually, due to your current revenue. And with your start planning the negotiating for new events through your current and global connections and resources. Additionally, you want to contact those diverse artists, as Zoe mentioned, and influencers, and have them commit early on before competitors can get a hand on them. And with that, we want to be able to host Head in the Clouds Vancouver in summer of 2024 and Head in the Clouds Honolulu of summer of 2025. And then you want to host these events annually to build your repertoire, increase your demand, and long-term growth. And by 2030, like I mentioned, you want to decrease those events to bring exclusivity and demand and diversify into different genres and movies.
Thank you so much. So for every single solution, we have risks. So we mainly identified 2 risks for you. For the first one, artist scandal, which has a media impact and media likelihood. So one of the mitigation could be communicate with the PR team to deliver a crisis resolution plan. And second, global pandemic have a high impact and low likelihood. One of the mitigation could be shift the music festival from in-person to online.
And finally, let's go over. You came to us with a problem of what is the next steps necessary for 88 Rising to rise to the next level. Our solution, Midsummer Madness. And finally, the impacts that we will have to expand Asian cultural representation across North America, maintain a strong brand image, and raise $2 million in the next 3 years. Thank you, and we now open the floor to questions.
Thank you for your presentation, and now it's time for the Q&A. So let's hear the first question from our judges.
Hello, thank you so much for your impressive presentations. I could easily understand what's your business strategy and what's your logic in setting up your next target. But to understand more, could you please explain more about how you can raise 2 million in the next 3 years? I cannot find any your financial analysis on this project, so could you please elaborate on this part? And also another question is about your target customers. I remember that you mentioned that your target customers must be on Canada, Vancouver, and on Honolulu, since this market has not been touched yet. So you will be focusing on your business in this area. But you think that your business in this untouched area must be profitable than maintaining your business in your current area. So I want to hear more about this point. As the population on this area looks not enough. Just you mentioned that just the population on this area is below 1 million in total, and also I don't think that all of the population in Asians, American in this area is that your target customers is generally music consumer is a young generation. So your target number of your target customer can be much more smaller than you expected. So please let me have your more comments on this point. Thank you.
For sure. I'll just touch on the target market portion. We specifically chose Vancouver and Honolulu because Vancouver, yes, that number is just total Asian population. However, geographically, Vancouver is right on the border of Seattle, which is in America. So in today's day and age, it is not foreign for people to fly to go see concerts, but it is a lot cheaper for people to fly within a country. So if you're not in Canada at all, a lot of Canadians will not want to go to the States. But if you're in Canada, people from Toronto, from Edmonton, from Montreal, where there are high Asian concentrations, would fly to Vancouver. Similarly, as people are flying from the middle of the United States to go to the New York show or the LA show. As for the Honolulu one, the reason we wanted to keep it there is Honolulu or Hawaii is a really popular vacation spot with a lot of tourism. So we really wanted to take advantage of the fact that a lot of people will just be there traveling anyways, and they have a great ecosystem for hotels and accommodations and restaurants and everything. So it's a great spot to have tourists travel to for this event and to be able to really experience a different type of Asian culture, as the Asian American culture is very different than the Asian Pacific Islander culture in Hawaii. I'll pass it to Anirudh to talk about the financials.
So I can take the question about how we would raise the 2 million in the next 3 years. So we did a detailed analysis of how much the revenue of 88 Rising is currently at, which is at around $2.5 million every year. And we took a conservative revenue multiple of 3, so making the value of 88 Rising currently at about $7.5 to $8 million. And we believe with the current industry raising so rapidly, we believe the value to also exponentially grow in the coming years. So in that view of things, we definitely think that 2 million in the next 3 years is definitely doable. And our marketing strategy and us announcing that we will have an event in Vancouver and Honolulu and all the other implementation we went over will actually gain a lot more customers and trust in the Asian Americans and kind of support this. And the second part of my answer, which I would like to bring up, is since we're also partnering up with a charity and 20% of this 20% of the money raised would be going to the Stop AAPI Hate. We strongly believe that we're creating a really moral outlook on how we want this notion of the music industry to be perceived by the whole world. So that is why we've kept the 2 million in the next 3 years. Assuming it is not possible, we will try to mitigate this and see where else and what other ways we can raise and finance the leftover part of the money, maybe by debt or maybe by a part of equity. But currently, this is our analysis and what we thought about. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, I have two questions here. Is the business focusing on Northern America only? That's number one.
Yes.
Number two, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that kind of our whole idea is that the Asian American market is the one that should be targeted, since that is the core value of 88 Rising.
Okay. And my next question would be, I can see that the strategy is along hosting the event because you have gauged the market share that, by 2026, the value, would increase by almost 4 times, right? Now, my question is that what is your current revenue mix, by channel for your company? Is event contribute more than 50% of your current revenue?
Yeah, I can take that question. So currently live events for your specific business are not more than 50%. And within the industry, which is pretty common among the industry, where live events are usually on the lower end of that 25% of your revenue, whereas 60% take on the recording and the streaming aspect of the music industry. But as we conducted through our analysis, the live events and tours industry quadrupled ever since COVID had died down, where people were ecstatic to go to live events and host live tours, and where we believe you can capture on that Asian American market who are still underserved within Northern America and in the Western world in general. So that's why we kind of want to target that Northern American market and host live events, because that increased growth will be going to around $9.8 billion by just 2026. That's kind of why our recommendation is to target that aspect of the industry.
And to add on for that, we are targeting North America, but also we are supporting the local Asian American businesses as well. So we're actually helping us to have a really better brand image, and we are hoping to build a foundation, right? And in the future, which will help us to attract other for example Black community or Indian population easier in the future.
Okay, so my next question would be, what about millennial, I am a Gen X, so I am learning about streaming and all that as well, and I find it very exciting, and I also start getting enlist some of the music in the Spotify, right? So how about is there any plan to expand or scale those potential markets?
For sure. Personally, I don't think we believe that there is an age limit for this. My own mom, I got her into K-pop and she's 55. She goes to concerts with me. So I believe that there's no age limit for this. And that, I mean, the people that have the money are the ones that are going to want to go. So you're not looking at kids, you're looking at young adults, and even their parents, and really just creating an environment that Asian Americans who might have felt like they didn't have an identity. For example, my dad got very whitewashed because he was an immigrant. Having that opportunity to reconnect with your culture at these types of events is something that I think anyone of any age would appreciate. I would bring my grandparents too.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there. Thanks for the presentation. Just 3 quick key questions from me. Number one, on the selection of risks you have on this slide, can you just rationalize your choice on that and any other sort of risks you see? And question number 2 is what's your people strategy on basically overall on your proposal? And the last question on the timelines, how feasible do you see these timelines, and sort of can you expand on these?
Yes, I can answer the first question for the risk. So those two risks are the main risks we consider for now. However, we do consider other risks as well. For example, since it didn't rise and most of the artists have a tour for globally, so there might be for different countries, they have different regulation for the tourists as well. So the restriction might be one of the risks for us. However, we do understand that if you have a really good PR team or other department, which will help us to solve the problem as soon as possible.
Would you be able to just repeat your second question?
What's your people strategy?
Oh yeah. So for our people strategy, we did consider that you already hosting Head in the Clouds, those current events, you already have global connections and resources, which you can really leverage on and be able to build on these next few events and connect on the Canadian side with those current connections and bring in the human capital that you need to really execute these future live events. And in terms of the timeline, do you want to just go to the timeline really quickly? Yeah. So looking at our timeline, although our timeline is very specific on the very initial aspect of it, because we want to build that key frame in these first 6 months of setting up the crowdfunding to raise that capital in order to be able to fund those future live events in 2024 and 2025. Whether that includes getting those diverse artists and influencers, signing them early on so they're prepared to do 2024 and 2025. That way your competitors have less of those influencers and artists to do so.
Thank you.
Do you have more questions or more answers to add on?
Can I give more questions?
Yeah, of course.
I remember this. You will try to downsize the event in other area like America and focus on the business in North America. So did you think about business opportunity loss from the downsizing the existing business? And another question is that I'm so sorry. Is that what's your financial analysis on music streaming? I'm thinking that you are focusing on holding an event and holding a concert in a specific area, but I didn't hear about your revenue analysis from the music streaming.
Sure, I can talk about the downsizing. So we don't actually plan to get rid of Head in the Clouds LA and Head in the Clouds New York that currently exist. We believe that by 2025, having 4 events per year would be profitable. I know people that would go to multiple. But then the plan by 2030 would be to make it more of an exclusive event. If you're not sure what Coachella is, it's the biggest music festival in the world. And they actually have like 6 stages going at one time. So having a festival that is that large, but only having it in one place is going to be able to bring the same amount of people and the same amount of revenue into one place, but with less expenses on traveling, less expenses on having to book different venues, and being able to have it on just a larger scale is the idea. Because once people have been to Head in the Clouds once, I bet they'll want to go again. I'll pass it on to my colleagues for the second question.
Yeah, so in terms of the financial analysis, we know that currently the music industry is booming. It's at $26 billion just on the music aspect, and 60% of that comes from paid streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, and iTunes and such that. But with these live events, you have around 30,000 people in attendance, spending about $150 per person to generate that revenue, which is approximately $3 million in revenue just for a single event. And we believe to scaling those events will increase your revenue, demand, growth, and allow you to be sustainable in the long term, which in result allowing you to decrease those number of events and bringing a larger scaled event by 2030 and allowing you to reach that Coachella-like vibe where almost 125,000 people come annually from across the globe. So we want to get to that stage.
I just wanted to add that we wouldn't be ignoring the streaming because the idea is that when people are exposed to the other genres within Asian music, they'll want to download the other genres. If they show up for a K-hip hop artist and they happen to have to be watching a J-rock artist or a K-pop artist, they'll download that song from 88 Rising. So we found that live events are the best way to market for both your other types in the music industry.
Okay, thank you.
So we have our time. Time is up, and thank you for your Q&A session and also for your presentation.